Okay, ready for a deep dive. Today we're tackling criminal justice social work.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is, and it's a field that often gets oversimplified,
Oh, sure.
Like we see it on TV, and it's all either like gritty prison scenes or these dramatic courtroom moments.
Right, exactly.
But what's the reality? Luckily, we've got some great material from RoleCatcher.com to dig into. They've got their whole career guide on criminal justice social work, plus insights from their interview prep and job search tools.
It's a really interesting mix of resources, and I think they give a much more realistic picture of what this career path is all about.
Totally. So let's jump right in. What did RoleCatcher.com say about what someone in this role actually does on a day-to-day basis?
So they actually have a great example of an entry-level criminal justice social worker. And one of the things they highlighted was conducting intake interviews.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the first point of contact.
Exactly. Imagine having to assess someone's needs, their risks, their potential.
All while, like, trying to build rapport?
Exactly. Talk about a high-pressure situation.
Seriously. It's not just paperwork. It's someone's life, right?
Absolutely. And that's where their example of a junior criminal justice social worker comes in.
Oh, okay. What do they say about that?
So this role was more about going beyond that initial assessment and starting to craft those individualized intervention plans.
Right, like really getting into the nitty-gritty of what that person needs to succeed.
Exactly. This particular social worker shared how they were developing specialized programs for high-risk offenders.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a high-stakes environment, right?
Intense. That's got to be emotionally demanding, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. And RoleCatcher.com doesn't shy away from that. They acknowledge that this field can be emotionally draining and even, depending on the specific role, dangerous at times.
Right, right. It's not all just like community outreach programs and support groups.
Exactly. You might find yourself working in correctional facilities, community organizations, or even like government agencies.
Each with their own unique set of challenges, I'm sure.
Definitely.
So it's really about being involved at all these different stages,
Yeah.
right? From prevention to reintegration, like you said.
Exactly. RoleCatcher.com really emphasized that. They talked about how criminal justice social workers might be supporting prisoners re-entering society, for example.
Which can be a whole other minefield.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Helping them secure housing, finding employment, addressing mental health concerns, substance abuse issues.
Oh my gosh. The list goes on and on.
It does, and it's all interconnected.
Right, absolutely. So with all of that on their plate, how do these professionals even begin to deal with the emotional toll? Did RoleCatcher.com talk about burnout, compassion fatigue?
They did. Yeah, they were very upfront about it, actually. They emphasized that self-care in this field is not a luxury.
It's a necessity.
Exactly. And they also pointed out that the resources available, both to support these social workers and the clients they serve, can be, well, limited.
It's heartbreaking, really, because you have all these passionate individuals going into this field wanting to make a difference,
Right.
but then they're hitting up against a system that isn't always set up to support them. So, knowing all of this, what did RoleCatcher.com say about the job outlook for aspiring criminal justice social workers? Is there a demand for this kind of expertise?
Well, interestingly enough, they actually projected a 5% growth rate over the next decade.
Oh, wow. So the need is there.
It seems like it. And I think it makes sense when you think about it. The issues they're tackling, like addiction, recidivism, systemic inequalities, those aren't going away anytime soon.
Sadly, no. And those issues require a special kind of person, right? Someone who's drawn to this work, who's passionate about social justice.
Absolutely. And someone who, let's be honest, isn't in it for the money.
Right. Because, speaking of, did RoleCatcher.com give any insights into salary expectations?
They did, but they were careful to point out that it can vary widely. Location, experience, education, even the specific employer, it all plays a role.
Of course. But did they give, like, a ballpark range?
They did. They cited a range of $40,000 to $70,000 per year.
Okay, so not exactly getting rich, but definitely a reflection of the important work being done.
Right. It's definitely a career path that attracts people who are driven by purpose, not just a paycheck.
Totally. So let's say someone's listening to this and thinking, this is it, I want to do this.
Yeah.
What's the first step? What did RoleCatcher.com say about the educational requirements?
Well, they emphasize that a bachelor's degree is usually the bare minimum.
Okay, so no shortcuts there.
Not really. They mentioned fields like social work, criminal justice, psychology, sociology, things like that.
Right, the stuff that gives you a solid foundation.
Exactly.
But they also mentioned some specialized certifications.
They did. And those can really make a candidate stand out.
Okay, like what kind of certifications are we talking about here?
Well, one they highlighted was becoming a licensed clinical social worker.
Oh, so you can actually provide therapy.
Exactly, which is
Because
huge in this line of work.
absolutely. So it's like having that extra layer of expertise.
Right, and it shows a commitment to professional development, which RoleCatcher.com was very big on.
They're all about those extra letters after your name, huh?
Well, it's not just about the letters, right? It's about demonstrating that you have the knowledge and the skills to really make a difference in this field.
Makes sense. So education, check. Certifications, check. What about actual hands-on experience? That's got to be crucial in a field as demanding as this,
Like,
right?
absolutely. And RoleCatcher.com dedicated a whole section to gaining practical experience.
Okay, good. So what do they suggest?
Well, they were big on internships or volunteer opportunities.
Oh, yeah, of course. Get in there and get your hands dirty.
Exactly. And they recommended looking for those opportunities at organizations that work directly with at-risk populations, correctional facilities, social service agencies, places where you can get real-world experience.
Because it's one thing to read about the challenges of, say, reentry or the impact of trauma,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to be there on the ground,
Yep.
working with people who are going through those things.
Absolutely. And you learn so much more from those firsthand experiences.
For sure. Did they give any specific examples of the types of skills someone could gain through those experiences?
They did. They highlighted a few key areas. First, there's the whole interpersonal skills thing, being able to build rapport with individuals who might be, distrustful of authority or struggling with their own personal demons.
Right, that takes a special kind of empathy and communication.
It does. And then there's the practical application of all that theoretical knowledge you gain in your education.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about knowing the concepts, but actually being able to put them into practice,
Exactly. And then, of course, there's cultural competence.
which is so important,
Yeah.
especially in a system that often disproportionately impacts marginalized communities.
Absolutely. Being able to understand and respond to the unique needs of diverse populations is huge in this line of work.
It's like they say, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. So having that cultural awareness is key to being an effective advocate.
100%. And, that cultural sensitivity is so important for building trust, right? Because you're often working with people who have been let down by the system, maybe even traumatized by it.
Absolutely. It's like, how can you expect someone to open up to you, to believe in the possibility of change, if they feel like you don't even see them?
Exactly. And I think that's something that RoleCatcher.com really emphasizes, that criminal justice social workers aren't just there to enforce rules or manage cases.
Right.
They're there to empower individuals, to advocate for their needs, to help them navigate a system that can feel incredibly daunting and often unfair.
Totally. It's almost like they have to be like cultural brokers in a way,
Yeah.
right? Bridging the gap between the system and the individuals it's meant to serve.
Yes. And that requires a deep understanding of like systemic inequalities, historical trauma, all of the factors that contribute to someone ending up involved in the criminal justice system in the first place.
It's a lot more than just like, here's a job application, good luck.
Right. It's about addressing those root causes, breaking down those barriers, and creating opportunities for real, lasting change.
And that requires ongoing learning, right? Because the
Yeah.
field of criminal justice is constantly changing, evolving.
Oh, absolutely. And RoleCatcher.com was very big on the idea of continuous learning and professional development.
Okay, so what do they recommend? Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve in a field that's constantly shifting?
Well, they had a few suggestions. One thing they mentioned was subscribing to industry publications.
Oh, yeah, to stay up to date on all the latest research and best practices.
Exactly. And then there's attending conferences and workshops.
Oh, yeah, networking opportunities.
Totally. But also a chance to, share insights with other professionals, learn from experts in the field.
So it's not just about like sitting in a lecture hall, but actually being part of a community of practice.
Exactly. Bouncing ideas off each other, challenging each other to grow.
Love that.
Yeah.
Did they happen to mention anything about professional organizations?
They did. They specifically highlighted the importance of joining groups like the National Association of Social Workers, NASW, or the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences, ACJS.
Oh, yeah. Those are the big ones.
Right. And they offer so many valuable resources like continuing education opportunities, ethical guidelines, even advocacy efforts to shape policies that impact the field.
It's like having that collective voice, that power in numbers
Yeah.
to advocate for change.
Exactly. And it's a great way for someone just starting their career to tap into a network of support and mentorship, too.
For sure. So we've talked a lot about the human element of this work, the empathy, the cultural awareness, the constant learning.
Right.
But I'm curious about the technology side of things. Did RoleCatcher.com mention any tools or resources that are out there to help these social workers do their jobs more effectively?
They did. And it's actually pretty cool. They have this thing called RoleCatcher Copilot AI.
Okay, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
It's like having a personal job search assistant.
That's exactly how they described it. It's like having this AI sidekick that can help you analyze job descriptions, tailor your resume, even get feedback on your interview answers.
Hold on, hold on. AI that can give you feedback on your interview answers.
That's what they said.
That's wild. I mean, how does that even work?
So, from what I gathered, you basically upload your resume and then maybe like a target job description,
Yeah.
And then the AI kind of crunches all that data and suggests improvements, highlights the skills and experiences that are most relevant to that particular job.
So it's like having a digital career counselor helping you put your best foot forward.
Exactly.
Wow. That's amazing. But what about the interview prep part? How can AI possibly help with something as, like, nuanced as a job interview?
Well, apparently you can use it to practice answering common interview questions.
Oh, interesting.
And then the AI analyzes your responses and gives you feedback on your clarity, your content, even your delivery.
It's like having a mock interview with an AI coach.
Right. And it can pinpoint areas where you might need to improve.
That's amazing. Honestly, that sounds like a game changer for anyone in the job market, not just for aspiring social workers.
Right. It's like having a secret weapon.
Totally. But speaking of aspiring criminal justice social workers,
Yeah.
what are some of the other resources that RoleCatcher.com offers specifically for them?
Well, they've got a ton of great content on their website, like detailed guides on different social work careers, a whole section on criminal justice social work.
Nice. Very comprehensive.
Yeah. And they even provide sample interview questions that are tailored to this field, which I thought was really helpful.
Oh, that's huge. Because let's be real, job interviews can be nerve-wracking enough.
Oh, tell me about it.
But when you're interviewing for a job that's as, like, high stakes and emotionally charged as this one, you want to be as prepared as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And knowing what kinds of questions to expect can make all the difference.
Totally. Did they happen to mention any specific examples of those interview questions? I'm always curious about that kind of stuff.
They did. And they ran the gamut, from practical experience to ethical dilemmas to how you approach working with, like, challenging populations.
Okay, so, like, give me an example. What kind of question are we talking about here?
Well, like, a straightforward one would be something like, describe your experience working with individuals involved in the criminal justice system.
Makes sense. Gotta have that experience.
Right. But then they also had more nuanced ones, like how do you ensure that you're following ethical standards when working with clients? Or how do you approach working with clients who may have experienced trauma?
Oh, wow, yeah. Those are great questions.
Right. It's not just about what you've done, but how you think, how you approach these complex situations.
Exactly. And honestly, those are questions that anyone working within the criminal justice system should be prepared to answer. Whether you're a social worker, a probation officer, a lawyer.
Absolutely.
It speaks to the importance of ethical conduct, trauma-informed care, a deep understanding of the complex needs of the individuals involved.
And RoleCatcher.com provides a lot of guidance on those topics, too, which I think is really valuable.
They really do seem to have covered all the bases.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like RoleCatcher.com is the place to go if you're even thinking about criminal justice social work as a career.
I have to agree with you there.
Because it's one thing to read, like a dry job description,
Right.
but they actually give you the tools and the resources to, like, take action, to actually pursue this path.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that they dedicate a section to the pros and cons, too.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the, like, idealism of wanting to help people,
Oh, for sure.
But you got to go in with a realistic view of the challenges, too.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about those pros and cons. What did RoleCatcher.com highlight as, like, the most rewarding aspects of this career?
Well, they definitely emphasize the whole sense of purpose,
Yeah, like making a real difference.
Exactly. Making a tangible difference in people's lives. And not just individuals, but like whole communities that have been impacted by the criminal justice system.
It's like that saying, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection.
Ooh, I like it.
And that's kind of what these social workers are doing, right?
Hmm.
Building those connections, providing that support system.
Up 100%. And RoleCatcher.com actually shared some really powerful anecdotes from social workers about those rewarding
Oh,
moments.
really? Like what?
So, one senior social worker told a story about a former client who, after years of struggling with addiction and, having run-ins with the law,
Right.
had managed to stay sober, get stable housing, even reconnect with their family.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
It really is. It just goes to show you the kind of impact a dedicated social worker can have.
It's those stories that give you hope, you know?
Absolutely, because
Uh,
it's a tough field.
it is, and I'm sure there are days when it feels like an uphill battle.
Oh, for sure.
So let's talk about the downsides. What did RoleCatcher.com say about the more challenging aspects of the job?
Well, they were very honest about the emotional toll it can take.
Right, because you're dealing with people's trauma, their pain, their struggles.
Exactly. And you're seeing the effects of things like poverty, addiction, mental health challenges, all these systemic issues that contribute to someone ending up involved in the criminal justice system.
And you're often working with limited resources too, right?
Absolutely. Which can lead to compassion fatigue, burnout, all of that.
Right, because you can only pour from an empty cup for so long.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher.com really emphasized the importance of self-care for anyone going into this field.
Okay, so what did they suggest? Because I feel like self-care is often easier said than done, especially in a job like this.
Well, they talked about the importance of seeking supervision, having a good support system of colleagues, setting boundaries to prevent burnout.
Okay, all the important stuff.
Yeah, and also making time for those self-care practices that help you recharge, whether it's mindfulness, exercise, spending time in nature, whatever works for you.
It's a good reminder that taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's essential, especially in a job where you're constantly giving to others.
Could not agree more.
Well, on that note, I think we've done a pretty deep dive on criminal justice social work, wouldn't you say?
We really have. And I have to say, I'm super impressed with RoleCatcher.com. They've really gone above and beyond to demystify this field.
Totally. They've given us like a 360-degree view of what it takes to be a criminal justice social worker, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
And they've given us, or I guess our listeners, the tools and resources to actually do something with this information.
Right, because knowledge is power, but it's useless if you don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. So for anyone out there who's feeling that tug, that call to make a difference in the lives of people impacted by the criminal justice system.
I highly recommend checking out RoleCatcher.com.
Yes. They've got everything you need to explore this career path, develop your skills, and see if it's the right fit for you.
And who knows, you might just discover your calling. That's it for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep striving to make a difference.